Issue 116. We start out on the planet of the Dracon Empire, where sinister events are being set in motion apparently, and some pink people see Sonic in the vapors of destiny, showing them that he's the one they seek. And for some reason they don't immediately recognize Sonic as the one they put on trial, as the one from that court somehow misremembers the appearance of a blue hedgehog. It would have made more sense for him to just lie to protect him. One of them says that the three of them are the leaders of the Empire's most powerful houses. Houses, like in the Dragon Kingdom. Well, I guess Dracon kinda sounds like dragon. And he reasons that if Sonic knew the ancient mystery, surely they already know about him. Why don't they? He was their prisoner once. After they decide to go after him because they think he knows the secrets of the emeralds, Sonic destroys a robot to free an animal, and Tails warns him of the two badniks behind him, with Sonic telling Tails to take it easy. You know, Sonic could just talk to him in a more reassuring way when telling him to take it easy, instead of saying, "Cool it, Tails," or something like that. Tails says that the last one's a pretty weird looking badnik, and Sonic suspects that it's a camera badnik because of the protrusion on its face. Oh, well that's kind of a dumb thing to just assume just because it has a protrusion on its face. Which Grimer points out from Flicky's Island, because the camera had a microphone, too. Then the camera robot is smashed by Sonic, and Grimer way too easily assumes their badnik raid on Mobius has failed, with Eggman saying that he only wanted to remind Sonic that he's still alive, and he acknowledges that he knows no ordinary badnik could beat Sonic, which is why he's constructing more metal knuckles. So the badniks are just pointless cannon fodder. The Emperor he just said would help him warps in and asks for his side of the bargain. Oh good, my assumption was right, he did pretend that he didn't know Sonic. That's surprisingly good writing. He says that he needs the emeralds and wanted Eggman to give them to him so he could rule the House of Magic. Eggman reminds him that they had agreed he would use his new metal elixirs to get the emeralds for him in secret, and he reminds the Emperor that there's risks involved if the other rulers of Dracon realize what he's up to. He's kinda reminding me of the Iron Queen by wanting to take over all of the houses. The Emperor says that the time of caution is over, and he wants to know where the emeralds are right away. So Flicky start flying back to Flicky's Island, and Tails hopes they won't be just grabbed by Eggman again. And I guess they're just so overly respectful of their desire to live in their little vacation island instead of warping to their home dimension where it's safe, that they're too stubborn to just decide to force the Flickies to live somewhere away from Eggman. Because letting them go back to Flicky's Island, where Eggman has to be, is really dumb of them, and almost invalidates their efforts of saving them from the badniks. They see the floating island, Sonic says it's been a while since they've seen Knuckles, and then stupidity kicks in again as Sonic gets a sudden feeling that something terrible's about to happen. Just explain that he's psychic already. Instead he just looked like a creator's pet. This makes Nicole's psychicness make sense, because at least she was an AI, and so she probably had a scanner. The story ends with him immediately telling Tails, who he calls his buddy, that everything's fine and things can only get better. Because now all of a sudden he doubts his instincts. Either that or it's a chronic liar to him. I mean, he does tend to lie that everything's fine to him a lot. In the next story, a text box says that Ebony the cat runs a famous coffee bar in a part of Metropolis called the Neighborhood, which is the blandest name ever. We see a text box from the psychic old lady Pajamas saying that she never felt such power. And she says she's never felt such vibrations this strong. And she sees a creature with enough power to destroy the world. Well, I guess it's pronounced Pie-Jamma, but I don't really like that pronunciation. It seems forced, so I'm just gonna nickname her Pajamas. It sounds more charming. As Ebony is doubting her visions because most of them are wrong, somehow, making me wonder why she didn't get her to a mental institution or a psychiatrist for hallucinations then. Supersonic shows up, still amnesiac. And if he's powerless by this point, I guess her vision was only of after he get his powers back, so nice spoiler there. We see some hobos complaining that the town's gotten worse since Eggman went, somehow. And then they get destroyed or something as a giant mecha out of nowhere says this place has got to be Mobius, and now he can do what he came here for. We see Lightmare say in the special zone that Biohazard was successfully teleported to Mobius by the Dimensional Teleporter. Lord Sidewinder says that he plans to harness Supersonic's hidden power, make himself invincible. Okay, does he have a power harnesser? Like a Chaos Siphon? And Mr. Fry says it's too risky for them to hang out in New Tech City when they just escaped from prison. but they never explained why these villains escaped from prison. As I expected, he's hit and called a coward. Meanwhile, Supersonic wishes that he could pay Ebony for the coffee, and she says forget it. The psychic says she's never sensed such evil, and Ebony doubts her genre blindly again. Supersonic says that he'd spent the last of his money days ago, and he wants a job. After Pajama says no in a panic, they wonder what the noise is about, and Ebony assumes it's a poetry reading. Someone is thrown against their table and there's a funny line where Pajama snarks, "Well, it must have been a really terrible poem." The story ends right when the mecha biohazard crashes through the wall. You know, instead of wasting all that comic space on clumsy foreshadowing by the psychic, we could have just immediately cut to Supersonic asking Ebony for a job and gotten to the interesting part of the story arc much faster. In the next story, a civilian is scared by spooky noises from the Haunted House Zone, or Old Hill Zone as it was originally called. So was it renamed from simply Hill Zone later on? The hill wasn't always old. How do you determine that this hill in particular is old? Wouldn't every hill be old because it was formed a while ago? Some panicking civilians tell Amy and Techno about ghosts, with one of them hanging carrots and not garlic to scare them away because carrots are cheaper. And the girls are genre blind, just assuming there's no ghost when this is a sci-fi fantasy universe. Although they could have been faked by criminals to scare people away from the house, much like the aliens were faked to scare people away from gold, but they don't make a reference to that as justification. After Techno cheers about another pun being the opposite of an audience surrogate since puns are worthless, I mean, it's not even explained that she's a dork and that's why she likes puns. The girls go into the house where a stone gargoyle almost falls on Techno, causing Amy to think now's a good time to make another pun after her best friend was almost badly injured. I guess it's a stress relief, but it seems insensitive at the moment. By the way, since Amy's been hanging out with Techno, we haven't seen Amy crush on Sonic in a while. Anyways, they find out that the one making the ghost sounds was the terrible singer Vane singing with stereos around him. Why would he make ghost noises instead of, singing lyrics? Was he going ooh a whole bunch? Why? Then it turns out that him singing with those stereos weakened the structure of the house, which must have been very old and weak then. And they rush out of it and the story ends. Well, that was a twist. The first two stories were by Nigel Kitching. The first one had nothing significant happen other than the Dracon Emperor deciding to go after Emerald so he can take over his world, and he lies about having seen Sonic before to the other rulers because he wants to keep them from going to Mobius and going after the Emerald as well. And the second story also is mostly padding, as it should have just cut straight to Supersonic asking Ebony for a job instead of wasting our time with clumsy foreshadowing. I mean, it's interesting to see a guy that looks like Sonic, let alone Supersonic, asking for a regular job to support himself. The final story was by Lou Stringer and was a one-shot where there was a genuine twist, as rather than the haunted house having ghosts or even criminals playing ghost sounds to scare people away from the house, it was a really terrible singer. The comic's usually so predictable that when it has an actual surprise, I'm impressed. Except that makes no sense because why would he only sing by making ghost sounds? At least the white figure seen in the window is explained to be him because he wears a white shirt, and I guess the window was blurry, foggy, but it seemed pretty contrived. I'm glad it ended in just one story so we didn't have to deal with Fabian more. But this isn't the last time that we're going to see him.